She is very difficult to officiate because of all of the contact that's happening around her all of the time. That being said, I was in contact with a number of WNBA coaches yesterday about this topic of the officiating in the WNBA.
All right, before we get into this, if you're passionate about sports culture and the biggest stories taking over the league, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what we're covering next. Here's a reality the WNBA doesn't want you to focus on. Their single most valuable player, the one athlete responsible for a $1 billion surge in popularity, is also the one they are seemingly failing to protect.
The second-year player clearing out that side of the floor, shooting on Stewie, and then watch the reaction with one another. Stewie's left.
Caitlin Clark is facing a barrage of physical contact game after game, and the referees are just letting it happen. This isn't just fan frustration anymore. It's a full-blown officiating crisis that's spinning out of control, and it has the power to dismantle everything the league has built this season. The recent game between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun wasn't just a matchup. It was a glaring exhibit of how bad the problem has become, showcasing moments so brutal and so blatantly ignored that it forced a Hall of Famer to break her silence on what's really going on behind the scenes. The undeniable truth of the WNBA's current renaissance rests squarely on the shoulders of one extraordinary talent, Caitlin Clark. Her impact transcends traditional basketball metrics, representing a cultural phenomenon that has fundamentally altered the league's financial trajectory and public visibility.
Tell me, what does Clark's return mean for the WNBA?
Well, I mean, it means a lot more people are paying attention once again. We know how much Caitlin drives ratings. We know how much Caitlin drives attention on the WNBA. And for her to come back and do it in that way was just...
When Clark suffered a quad injury that sidelined her in late May, the consequences were immediate and devastating. Viewership plummeted by approximately 50% in some cases, social media engagement tanked, and the national conversation around the league practically vanished. This dramatic decline occurred despite the league's other talented stars and compelling storylines, demonstrating that Clark's drawing power operates on an entirely different scale. The Indiana Fever's games without Clark averaged 851,000 viewers, respectable by historical WNBA standards, but pale in comparison to the numbers she generates when on the court.
It's down behind the play, but they've got Caitlin Clark. Two players with incredible up. Clark, another long three.
The financial implications of Clark's absence are equally staggering. The league's $2.2 billion media rights agreement signed in 2024, the largest in women's sports history, is fundamentally predicated on her ability to drive viewership. When Clark doesn't play, merchandise sales dip, ticket purchases decline, and the league's overall revenue suffers. Her return from injury provided the most compelling evidence of her singular value. In her first half back, she delivered 25 points, including 3 logo three-pointers in a mere 38 seconds, leading to one of the most watched WNBA broadcasts ever, with a peak of 2.88 million viewers. To contextualize this number, the average viewership for the entire NHL Stanley Cup Finals was 2.5 million, meaning a regular season WNBA game featuring Clark outperformed the championship series of a century-old men's sports league. This isn't merely popularity. It's a cultural watershed moment that the league has failed to adequately protect.
But here we go with Caitlin Clark, singularly, being missing for the time she was gone, and ratings tanking, 50% in some cases. And then also she comes back and reminds everyone how spectacular she is.
The physical targeting of Caitlin Clark reached its most visible crescendo during the Indiana Fever's game against the Connecticut Sun, which served as a disturbing microcosm of the league's broader officiating crisis. During this contest, Clark was essentially tag-teamed by opponents in a sequence that crossed the line from competitive physicality into potentially dangerous play. Marina Mabry clawed directly at Clark's face in a move that appeared intentional and dangerous, followed immediately by J.C. Sheldon delivering a hard body check that shoved Clark to the court. The reaction from coaches, commentators, and fans wasn't a surprise. It was pure shock at both the actions and the officiating response.
This is J.C. Sheldon right here with an entire handful of Caitlin Clark's shoulder and bicep, and she's twisting it. Okay, I mean, this is wild. Here's the zoomed out look, the snapshot. I mean, this league does not have control of it.
Most alarming was the referee's largely passive response. The incident was largely overlooked with a non-call that sent a chilling message to everyone watching. This level of physicality against the league's brightest star will be tolerated. The aftermath of this incident revealed the deepening divide between players, coaches, and officials. Fever coach Stephanie White explicitly stated that the referees lost control of the game, a sentiment echoed by numerous commentators and analysts. What made this particular incident so emblematic of the larger problem was not just the physical play itself, but the escalating pattern that led to it.
The game has changed so much. Players are faster, they're better, they're bigger, they're stronger. They're as good as they've ever been. They're as athletic as they've ever been. The game is fast now. Things are happening quickly. Everybody's getting better, except the officials.
Throughout the game, tension had been simmering with hard fouls and intense physicality under the basket. Yet officials failed to establish control through consistent whistles or enforcement of existing rules. The league's subsequent response, assessing a flagrant foul on Connecticut's J.C. Sheldon for the eye poke, while giving technical fouls to Clark and 2 Connecticut players for the ensuing fracas, felt to many like too little, too late. This incident demonstrated how inadequate officiation doesn't merely affect game outcomes, but potentially jeopardizes players' safety. The Fever Sun game was not an isolated incident, but rather the boiling point of a problem that has been brewing all season, and indeed, throughout Clark's entire professional career. Go back to the preseason, and you'll find clips of defenders grabbing, holding, and twisting Clark's arm with no call. Examine the heartbreaking loss to the New York Liberty earlier in the season, and you'll find a glaring free throw disparity and a missed call on the final possession, where video replay clearly showed Natasha Cloud fouling Caitlin Clark on a potential game-winning shot attempt.
Hey, we would have been crashing out RT.
Courtney, if somebody ever tackles you like that,
nobody would ever tackle me like that. They would play with Bridget like that, and then we would have to take it up there.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
But I'm just saying.
Nobody would ever tell me like that.
If that ever happened, you better crash out behind me, because I'm crashing out behind you. We can share the same jail cell.
Fever coach Christy Sides was visibly enraged by this non-call, and the social media outcry was immediate. The league's response, finding Sides for criticizing the officiating, felt to many like a quiet admission of guilt rather than a genuine addressing of the underlying problem. This pattern of inconsistent officiating has created a dangerous environment where players feel increasingly empowered to test physical limits against Clark specifically, knowing those limits are rarely enforced. As noted by ESPN's analysis, foul calls are actually up slightly this season, with teams averaging 18.7 fouls per game, the highest since 2017. But the distribution and consistency of these calls have raised serious questions. The problem is particularly acute for perimeter players like Clark. As Los Angeles Sparks guard Kelsey Plum noted, "I drive more than anyone in the league, so to shoot 6 free throws is FING absurd." What makes this pattern especially concerning is that it occurs amidst a broader physical escalation throughout the league.
I'm sitting there at the end of the first quarter when she had that 38-second stretch where she drained deep 3 after deep 3 after deep 3. I was just sitting there thinking, I've been around this league since 1997. I have never seen that in a WNBA game. Have we seen players go on runs? Of course we have, but not like that. Not where a couple of the three-pointers are from 30-plus feet. It was an exhibition by her.
Aces coach Becky Hammond remarked that the physicality is out of control and that there is no freedom of movement, going so far as to compare the style of play to rugby rather than basketball. When referees lose control of games, a dangerous escalation occurs as players and coaches feel compelled to take matters into their own hands. This creates a lawless environment, a proverbial Wild West on the court, where the only rule becomes survival. As one coach implied, if officials won't protect your star player, you must instruct your team to protect her themselves. This mentality represents a recipe for disaster that encourages increasingly physical play and normalizes dangerous behavior. The situation resembles telling drivers on a highway there are no speed limits or police enforcement. If you don't speed, you'll be left behind, but if everyone speeds, catastrophic collisions become inevitable. The players are getting faster, stronger, and better, but the officiating appears stuck in the past, creating a gap that isn't just leading to bad calls, but fostering a culture of acceptable violence that puts every player, but especially the league's brightest star, in serious jeopardy.
Talking about the WNBA. So if you needed to sort of have it affirmed to you that it is just her, that the singularity of her is what we are talking about and her star power, you got it. with this absence and then the way she came back.
The cultural permissiveness around physical play against Clark has developed into one of the most disturbing storylines of the WNBA season. After the Connecticut game, Fever player Sophie Cunningham essentially embraced the role of an enforcer, protecting her star player when the refs wouldn't. Tellingly, Cunningham's jersey sales subsequently went through the roof, and entrepreneurs began selling commemorative t-shirts in her honor, suggesting that a segment of the fan base applauds this extra-legal approach to player protection. This development raises uncomfortable questions about whether the league is inadvertently encouraging a style of play that prioritizes physical confrontation over skill execution. As Mystic center Stephanie Dolson noted, "I know some girls want more calls, but I think a lot of them will learn when the refs call too much, it's not fun." I actually think they're letting us play pretty physically this season, and I'm personally enjoying that. This sentiment reveals a fundamental divide within the league between those who favor a more physical style of play and those who believe skill and freedom of movement should be protected. The ultimate stakes in this officiating crisis are nothing less than the long-term viability of the WNBA's historic growth period. The league is currently enjoying unprecedented attention and financial investment. Merchandise sales are soaring, arena attendance records are being shattered, television deals are becoming more lucrative, and expansion teams are paying $250 million fees, 5 times the amount paid just 2 years ago. However, this entire renaissance is built on a fragile foundation that depends disproportionately on the health and continued participation of Caitlin Clark. If the constant unchecked physicality results in a serious injury that forces her to miss significant time, the entire house of cards could collapse. The viewers who return to the WNBA because of Clark would likely leave again. Sponsors would pull back, and the narrative would shift from growth to failure, potentially devastating for a league that has struggled for decades to achieve mainstream relevance. The league's response to this crisis would define its trajectory for decades. As WNBA legend Rebecca Lobo revealed, conversations with numerous coaches show unanimous concern about the officiating problem. This isn't merely a question of game outcomes, but of fundamental values and priorities. The Players' Union is already pushing for a transformative collective bargaining agreement to address a legacy of low pay and improved working conditions. But these gains could be meaningless if the on-court product becomes compromised by inconsistent and dangerous play. The situation represents a critical test of leadership for Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and other league executives. They must address the officiating problem with urgency and transparency, potentially including increased referee training, higher pay for officials to attract and retain talent, greater consistency in rule application, and more severe consequences for dangerous play. As Natasha Cloud of the New York Liberty argued, "If I can get a technical in the game for my emotions, I think the referees should be able to be reprimanded for their mistakes too. If my fines are going to be public knowledge, I think their fines should be public knowledge." So, what are the actual stakes here? They are astronomically high. This isn't about one missed call or one lost game. This is about the long-term viability of the WNBA's historic moment. The league is enjoying a level of attention and financial investment it has never seen before. Jersey sales are through the roof. The WNBA store reported a 756% increase in online sales in the weeks following the draft, with Clark's jersey breaking all previous sales records. Arena attendance records are being shattered across the league, not just in Indiana. The Las Vegas Aces recently announced they've sold out every home game this season, while teams like Atlanta and Washington are seeing their highest attendance figures in over a decade. Television deals are becoming more lucrative, with the league's new media rights agreement valued at approximately $2.2 billion over 11 years, representing a monumental increase from previous contracts. But this entire renaissance is built on a fragile foundation, the health and presence of Caitlin Clark. The league's projected growth trajectory, including expansion teams paying record fees of $250 million and sponsors increasing their investments by unprecedented margins, depends heavily on maintaining current viewership levels. If the constant unchecked physicality results in a serious injury that forces her to miss significant time, the entire house of cards collapses. The viewers who came back will leave again, likely for good. Historical data from other sports shows that when a transcendent talent exits, approximately 35 to 40% of casual viewers disengage permanently. The sponsors will pull back. Major partners like Nike, State Farm, and Google have specifically tied their increased WNBA investments to the Clark effect and the new demographics she brings. The narrative will shift from growth to failure, potentially undoing decades of progress in women's sports. Rebecca Lobo and the coaches she spoke to understand this deeply. They recognize that the league's failure to address officiating consistency isn't just a competitive issue, but an existential business risk. They see the golden goose, and they see the wolves circling, and they are desperately wondering why the league isn't building a stronger fence. The solution requires immediate action, implementing advanced training programs for officials, establishing clearer standards for protecting perimeter players, and creating accountability measures for referees who consistently miss dangerous plays. The WNBA must recognize that protecting its most marketable player isn't about giving her special treatment. It's about protecting the league's financial future and ensuring that this historic moment of growth becomes a sustainable era of prosperity for all players and stakeholders. The time for action is now, before a preventable incident undermines everything the league has worked to build. The WNBA is at a crossroads unlike any in its 28-year history. The league has been handed a once-in-a-generation athlete who has single-handedly transformed the economic and cultural landscape of the sport, driving unprecedented media coverage, sponsorship deals, and fan engagement. Yet, despite this remarkable opportunity, the league is failing its most basic duty: to provide a safe and fair competitive environment for all players. The officiating problem has escalated from a minor controversy to what many analysts are calling an existential threat to the league's future. The whispers from coaches have become public warnings, with respected figures like Becky Hammond stating that the physicality is out of control and the game is beginning to resemble rugby more than basketball. The evidence of this crisis is no longer confined to isolated incidents, but has become a pattern documented in countless video compilations that circulate on social media, each showing increasingly dangerous plays that go unpenalized. These clips are no longer just highlights of hard fouls. They become exhibits in a case against the league's negligence. The solution requires immediate and comprehensive action, implementing advanced training programs for officials using technology similar to the NBA's Replay Center, establishing clearer standards for protecting perimeter players, creating accountability measures for referees who consistently miss dangerous plays, and potentially recruiting officials from the NBA's G League to address the talent gap in officiating. The financial implications of inaction are staggering. The league's projected growth trajectory, including expansion teams paying record fees of $250 million and sponsors increasing their investments by unprecedented margins, depend heavily on maintaining current viewership levels that are directly tied to Clark's presence. If the league fails to address this issue, they risk not only player safety but the confidence of broadcast partners, corporate sponsors, and the next generation of fans who have recently discovered the WNBA. The ball is now in their court to demonstrate whether they can evolve from a niche sports organization to a major professional league capable of protecting its assets and ensuring fair competition. The world is watching to see if the WNBA will rise to this historic challenge or allow its modern-day revolution to end before it ever truly began. If this deep dive into the issues shaping sports today resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more content that goes beyond the headlines, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.